So, was I familiar with the trial, or OPPT? I don't even know what that is. So I guess I'm not very familiar with that. I definitely wasn't familiar with the scheme. I had of everybody has their own bank account at the Federal Reserve, and your social security number is the account, and had no idea about that. What I was familiar with prior to going in was the sovereign citizen movement. And so when I'm a huge it's kind of weird. I was a political science major, and particularly with the third branch of government, I was very interested in. And so I promised myself that whenever I would get free time, I would go and watch cases. And I have 4 children now. Free time doesn't come very often. And so I jumped at the opportunity whenever my in-laws were in town and I could have a break to get out of the house, that I wanted to experience a trial. And so I looked up the court calendar to see if there was a trial happening. And the Bean slash Tucci Giraffe trial was there. And I just did a modicum of research to local kind of USA Today stuff about RVs and bank accounts for the government, but mainly it was the sovereign citizen movement that made me most interested at wanting to attend this, just to see what it's like. And so I walked in right at jury selection. In fact, I kind of got confused there for a little while and was in line with the jury to go in. It's a long story. Eventually, a bailiff or a marshal corrected me and where I need to go. And so I sat down with them, with the IUV folk, and they were very quick to try to indoctrinate me to their cause. And it was very interesting. Everything was viewable. All the bank records, everything was completely viewable in these huge plasma screen monitors that were above us. As I said, I accidentally really sat with them, not knowing where people were to sit. And plus it was jury selection, and so it was very limited on where we could sit anyway, so I found myself right with the IUV groupies. And yeah, you can, in fact, I feel that they shared too much information up on the screens. And the defense, or the elbow counsel at least, was objecting to the fact that they were showing Bean's social security number out there for the entire world to see. And I felt that the transcripts are spot on. I only read the first day or so's, and then I skipped to the last day for the sentencing. But from what I could read, it was just deja vu all over again. But you know what? Randomly enough, one of the things that really confused me, this is probably part of the process for courts, is that the opening argument for the prosecution wasn't in the transcripts that was posted to the IUV, and I don't think that they were. I think that there was a note that they were redacted, removed, or something like that, and that was just terrible, because I came back and I would share with my wife, who again just had a baby, to recount to her all about the trial, and I loved the prosecution's opening statements. So I went straight there, hoping to read her the prosecution's opening statement, and it is nowhere to be found. And that opening statement was on such and such date, Randall K. Bean robbed a bank. He didn't use guns. He used a computer keyboard and a mouse, and Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe helped him cover it up. I think that the thing that surprised me most of all about this trial is not what happened inside the courtroom, but what happened outside the courtroom. Because it wasn't long until I was able to track down the hashtag HATJ threads all over the internet. Sorry about that. And so that led me to BZ. No, you know what? One of the IUV groupies scribbled out IUV.com, handed it to me, and that's when I saw their YouTube videos and how they had midday reflections and at night reflections and even early morning reflections before going in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these people think it's the freaking OJ trial and this is court TV or something like that. And so, but what surprised me the most is not about friends hoping that their friends become innocent and thinking that there's just great injustice that's happening here. And even the kind of conspiratorial mindset, okay, even the sovereign citizen movement, I saw a few YouTube videos of people getting tased, being sovereign citizen folks and all of that. Even that didn't surprise me. What really surprised me, especially as someone who both studies a good amount of theology and happens to also be a skeptic in many areas, is the New Age connection to all of this. That just totally blew my mind. I still, to this day, haven't really grasped the connection between the two. Before she was in prison, Heather Ann would go on these radio shows, or not radio shows, some podcast channel stream or whatever, and she would go out there and talk about the plight of the universal cleanup, and I've been to Antarctica, and Bill Clinton was there, whomever, and all that. And then the host is like, okay, great, thank you, Heather Ann, for sharing. Now let's all meditate. And you're like, where the crap did this come from? I still, to this day, I have no idea this New Age connection, and you are a creator being. Totally. A couple of reservations, I'd say. The first reservation was I loved being a neutral party when I was there with them. So I haven't come out of the anti-HATJ closet until now, because I loved having that air of objectivity, and I was able to sit there with them and just act fascinated towards all of this. I never let on that I was on their side. And thank goodness they couldn't see my facial expressions throughout the trial. And I have a lot to share with that on some of the jury's reactions, and even how that jury, I'll save that for later. But to be frank with you, hey, one more thing that I wanted to add just about my experience at the trial is that how patient Judge Varlin was with Heather Ann Giraffe and Bean and their elbow counsels, recognizing that they were representing and going by themselves. He had just tremendous patience, and he was very careful. He was very kind. There can be no just insinuation that they received an unfair trial. In fact, I think that they were given a lot of mercy, a lot of passes from the bench. If Judge Judy was up there, she would have torn them a new one on the first day. But they were very gracious to them and gave them every opportunity to make their case. It is Friday, February 26th. I'm sitting in a bakery just recounting what occurred in U.S. District Court. This morning, I entered in at about 9:29 a.m. And at the time, the defense was continuing to question the representative from the Federal Reserve Bank. And it was a long line of questioning in which the jury was obviously very unsettled just in how long that it was taking. And one highlight, or at least one comical moment, two comical moments. The first, in the previous day testimony, the day before, the guy from the Federal Reserve said that, the Federal Reserve was created by Congress. And fast forward to today, what I think the defense was trying to get at was, she asked the question, who created Congress?
And the guy, senior vice president from the Federal Reserve Bank, just stood there looking at her, and he said, like, the founding fathers in the 1700s. And she said, what you're trying not to say is the people, and to somehow allude that the people control Congress, and or at least, the people have a stake in the Federal Reserve Bank, and thus the defendant would have an account there, a secret account. But anyway, it was a funny moment, but no more funnier than the defense was recounting how many people have been involved in this scam. Thousands of people, because of a YouTube video, were trying to pull money from the Federal Reserve Bank. And according to the representative from the Fed, he said something along the lines of, most people, well, he used the word greedy. People were being greedy. He said most people were paying off their credit card bills and their water bill or their utility bills and so on and so forth. And the defense, the main defendant, the one with all 7 charges brought against him, who's defending himself, got up to the stand and said, do you call, actually I think this was his quote-unquote attorney, but he said, do you call people greedy trying to pay off credit card bills and their utilities? And he said, lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, he said, no, not everybody was trying to pay off credit card bills and utilities. Some were trying to buy RVs with it. And that's when the word greedy came in. And later on, the defense did get up there, or Randall K. Beam particularly, and trying to corner this representative of the Federal Reserve Bank and saying, you don't know me, you call me greedy, yada, 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 yada. But juror number 4, she is absolutely, she can't roll her eyes back any farther whenever this questioning is happening. It's just going on way too long. The judge called out how long, like the redirect is twice as long as the direct questioning. And there's at one point when it came to who created the Congress, juror number 9 absolutely just literally face-palmed and started massaging his temples at that point. So obviously, I think the jury is done with this. They are ready to deliberate as well as they should be.